Hey guys, welcome back to my channel in the following pages. Today's book is about Picatrix. I have already made a video on the book 1 of the Picatrix. So this video is basically the book 2, the chapter 2 of the Picatrix. So let us begin. So basically the book 2 of the Picatrix opens with a promise to discuss the heavenly signs, the motion of the 8th sphere, the fixed stars that we have in our solar systems, and how these motions affect the real world, the reality. So the chapters, and it talks about the planets and their motions. Motions shape earthly events. The root of magic is understanding planetary motions and what it implements on matter. The early lessons of this chapter of this book says that masters in India and Egypt used this celestial knowledge in practical operations, and it also gives us an example in this chapter. It goes by the scorpion cure. It's basically a sigil, a scorpion figure set on a golden ring with a bezoar stone, made when the moon was in the second phase of Scorpio, an elected astrological moment. And then the ritual details it goes with: inspect the figure and burn incense, have the patient wear the ring, the pain and cries cease, and the person then recovers the scorpion bite. Author of this book replicates the image and with incense and similar operations, and gives us several examples in the books, claims to have achieved marvels offered as proof that timed celestial images work. So this chapter tells us about the disciplines that need to be followed in order to perform these magic spells and whatsoever. It talks about the quadrivium. I also have a video on quadrivium. If you go to my channel, I will also link it in the video. It says that no one can truly understand heavenly works or apply them on earth without training in the quadrivium: arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Why each of these things matter? Arithmetic and geometry compute celestial motions, trajectories, and proportions. Music, harmonics, grasp how number and ratio unify and discord things, harmonies among bodies and operations. And then comes astronomy. Astronomy observes, interprets the movement of the heavens. So neglecting proportion leads to ignorance of operations and their kinds. Ignoring similarity obscures causes. Skipping the metaphysics, logic blocks, understanding of generation, corruption, and first principles. And then it talks about all the works of the planets, the sun, and the moon. It says that the moon's 4 main quarters and what they do. First quarter, from conjunction to first square, increases moisture more than heat, best seen in the sprouting and the growth of herbs and young plants. Second quarter, first square to opposition, strengthens both heat and moisture equally, boosts humidity, heat in vegetables and minerals. Third quarter, opposition to second square, still augments moisture and heat, but heat dominates, and most manifest in animals, vegetables, and minerals, works more with heat than the moisture. Then comes the fourth quarter, second square back toward conjunction, combustion. Lunar force wanes, operations tend to dry and become cold. Overall effect is moderately dry to very cold. And the moon conjoined with the sun is basically the fifth quality. Exact sun-moon contact within 1 minute gives the moon a special superior virtue. Traditions vary. Some Persians emphasize the power, and weaknesses depend on the rising sign. Greeks, Egyptians often prefer conjunction over mere aspect. Practical rule the author of the book adopts is that the moon's job is to prepare matter, dispose and receive forms, and the sun's job is to complete the work, perfect what is lacking, illuminate basically what is hidden. And thus, when the moon is joyful with the sun, especially in conjunction, beginnings are favored. The experienced operator uses this for the most fabrications and all things that need permeating heat. It says the moon outranks the rest of the planets. The moon is the mediatrix. She receives influences from stars, planets, and pours them into the sublunar world. So you must watch her more than any planet. This is what the book says. And we need to judge the moon whether she's under fortunate or unfortunate aspects, whether she's waxing, gaining light, or waning, losing light, what aspect she's making, sextile, square, trine, opposition, and to which planet. And then comes waxing moon, stronger, more useful for most actions and the growth, augmentation. Waning moon, better for diminishing or cutting things down, ending things. And timing specific actions with the moon also matters. From conjunction, left square, opposition, good for buying, selling, and petitions, legal disputes, taking counsel of official duties, government stuff. For opposition, right square, conjunction, good for collecting debts, returning what's owed, scholarship, philosophy, and searching of the truth. Then comes the ascendant signs and what you're trying to do with those signs and planets. Aim to have a fortunate planet ruling or occupying the ascent and fortunate lord of that sign specific. Cardinal signs such as Aries and Capricorn favor beginnings and starting of new things. Fixed signs excel at binding, permanence, attraction, spirit calling, binding, and operations meant to last. For spirit work binding, put the ascent in a common mutable sign and the moon in a mobile cardinal sign aspecting the ascendant. And then comes the long-lasting operations. Prefer the ascendant in a fixed or common sign. Put the moon in a fixed sign, expecting the lord of her own house by trine or sextile, and free of combustion or malefic interference. And it talks about other examples, other rituals. It talks about the speed, mobility of the signs and the boundaries. Among mobile cardinal signs, speed goes through Aries, Libra, and Cancer very quickly. Operations are quickest when a fortune planet is rising and the moon is waxing and swift in motion. Determining sign boundaries, terms, and their limits depends on precise relations of the moon and the Lord and their timed aspects. So it talks about these planetary movements, these rituals in detail. I'm just giving you I'm just summarizing it for you. Then it also gives you a list of the practical checklist that you would need to perform a ritual. You know, the time, it will tell you the time, which planet, which zodiac, and what kind of incense or the stuff you would require for the ritual. And then it talks about the three branches of science, of this science specifically: image magic, talismans, making figures and images with timings, and sacrifices, prayers, scripture associated with the sapiens. And then comes astrology, science of the stars, calculating and interpreting celestial motions, credited to the Greeks, called the foundation of all magic. And then comes the operative word magic, powers affected by incantations and spoken names, and includes binding losing spirits, especially linked to the Indians, with notable success also among Yemenis and the Arabic people. And it talks about what different nations are said to excel in this specific knowledge, talismans, rituals, whatsoever. Greeks theoretically mastery astral science, proportions, and the knowledge base that grounds every other part of the knowledge. Sapiens included ritual, talismans, prayers, offerings, and celestial magic. Indians, on the other hand, pre-Islamic medieval times, exceptional practical power by words and ritual acts, famed for both healing of the venom and illnesses and harming people with driving to madness, stirring love, discord between people, and for binding or dismissing spirits. Some Yemenites and Nabateans share this sort of knowledge also. Then it also explains what virtue means in magic, a real testable power that shows itself in nature and experiment. An operation works best when an agent acts according to its own proper nature upon matter that resembles it. Like effects like when the temperament and the species of the material match the acting forces, the effect becomes stronger, clearer, and truer. Medicines work by this harmony, and magical images do too, the talismans. Not because the metal or stone has power by itself, but because celestial forms can be impressed into matter that's prepared and disposed to receive them. Images receive planetary power through these right ordering of the celestial planets. The practitioner selects ingredients whose qualities correspond to the desired planets, signs, zodiac, and the time of the planetary motions, and also the spirits. Then arrange and compounds them in a sequence that mirrors the cosmic order so that the planet's spirit follows its proper house into the image. When the composition approaches the right form and proportion, its effects intensifies, just as properly mixtures of species become medicinal. The text, which is used in the ritual, describes the nature's own method as the model. Planetary powers act on primordial matter, minerals, air, and water, stirring, cooking, and burning, and fixing it until it can receive a perfect form. Planets and artifacts alike come to be the stages. Raw material is prepared, given form, nourished, and eventually returns toward a state ready to take a new form again. For art and crafts, this means matter must first be stripped of a prior form or softened so it can accept another. Brewers turning grain into beer or milk into cheese and butter are examples of this successive reception of forms through preparation. And it also gives Saturn banishing recipes. It gives us a lot of recipes, a lot of rituals. I'm going to talk about the Saturn's banishing recipe. If you want a place to remain uninhabited, engrave certain figures on a thin lead sheet using pig's brain as the medium, and do it in the day and hour of the Saturn with the second phase of the Capricorn rising and Saturn in that phase. Bury a place the sheet at the site. The malefic virtue of Saturn will flow into the spot and keep it depopulated as long as the sheet remains. The author adds that the six figures discussed work only by the power of the planets when joined to be specified constellations. Apart from these, there are no fixed star figures worth divulging, which is why he fully sets out this planetary method. And then it also catalogs which metals and stones each planet governs, because sympathetic materials is essential for making effective images. Saturn rules iron and part of the gold among metals. Among stones, he claims diamond, onyx, camu, jet iron, and magnesium, with partial influence over red stones. Jupiter rules lead and favors white and yellow gems. Jupiter partly governs emerald, beryl, crystal, other clear, shining stones, and even gold. Mars rules red, bronze, and all kinds of sulfur, and has a share in glass. His stones include Permonida, bloodstone, carnelian onyx, and generally red or speckled stones. The Sun rules Egyptian glass and arsenic among materials and is linked with garnet, diamond, red pearls, and other bright clear stones. Venus rules red bronze with a share in silver and glass, and among stones she governs azure, coral, with partial sway over beryl and magnesium. Mercury rules quicksilver with a part in tin and glass, and governs emeralds of all types, with sharing influence over crystal, azure, onyx, and beryl. A short table then lists the 7 classical planets for the figure that follows. And there is also symbology, like it mentions the figures that are mentioned in the book. I will try to put those images in the video also. And then the text finishes by presenting several authoritative images of Saturn from different sources. Picatrix, this version specifically, depicts a man with a crow-like face and camel's foot, seated on a throne holding a spear and a lance or dart. Apollonius version is basically a version, is a stern old man seated upright on a tall throne. This version shows a man lifting his hands, holding fish, with a lizard under his feet. Other sages picture a man standing on a dragon, a scythe in his right hand, and a spear in his left, in black and tawny clothing. And there are other examples also, the imageries each culture and tradition used to have and what they have right now. There were not a lot of changes, but there were like tweakings in the rituals, the words, and the talismans. But overall, it was the same. It mostly talks about the Indian sages because they have more scriptures and more knowledge when it comes to astrological magic. Their sages fasted for 40 days, beginning at the first hour of Sunday, eating only a 40th of the first day's meal on the last day, and used drugs to suppress the appetite so that the body's urge fell silent. As the senses grew subtle and the mind sharpened, they reported a clearer perception of spiritual influences. Earthly tastes and pleasures became hateful, and they felt the heavens' powers drawn down to them. From this state, they claimed to know planetary periods, to legislate rights as they wished, and most importantly, to be led to knowledge of God's unity and light. The writer of this book pauses to avoid digression, then cites al-Razi as a precedent for giving concrete, tested electional rules on Picatrix, on these rituals. He then lists lunar elections for common aims, for love, friendship, or fellowship, work when the moon is with or beholding Venus, when Venus is basically in its orbit, ideally in Pisces or Taurus, and avoid configurations where the moon is tied to Mars on the angles, which can make the work malevolent, evil. For bloodshed or enmity, put the moon in a watery sign in Aries or Cancer, square or conjoined to Saturn for harsh effects. To bind tongues, place the moon under the sun rays and operate at night. For petitions to kings, elders, or nobles, have the moon aspect the sun in his house or exaltation, and near the midheaven for judges and legal affairs. Face Jupiter in Pisces or Sagittarius at midheaven. For servants of kings and matters of debts and reckonings, face Mercury in Gemini or Virgo, with the moon full for completing transactions. Finally, the writer gives rules about the lunar aspects. The moon squared to a planet shows most strongly when she is on the angles, especially at midheaven. Favor aspects with benefits for good works and with malefics for harmful ones. As aspect is stronger when the moon is east and the sun before him rather than behind. Trines and sextiles when with the sun are excellent for noble aims, treasures, honor, victory, especially if the moon is in the 10th house, her own house. So this chapter talks a lot about the rituals, a lot about talismans, a lot about the planetary positions and the motions, how can they be aligned with the zodiac, and as they are aligned with the time and the position of the zodiac, how you can use certain metals, certain imagery, certain spells, words. It's all about timing, what I've understood up till now when reading this book and reading this kind of knowledge, which we call magic, but it's basically old occult science, which I feel like has died over time because humans were not able to understood it or preserve it. But it's just science. And science, these tools can be used for evil purposes and good purposes. So this is basically the book 2 of the Picatrix. I will be making other parts, other books which are mentioned, other chapters that are mentioned in this book, the Picatrix. But for this book, this is it. And I will see you next time in the next video. So have a great day, guys.